Earlier today, I went to see a sleeper movie, and I say a sleeper movie because it came out on July the 4th, which was, I believe, the same day that the Barbie movie and Oppenheimer came out. So the movie that I went to see was called Sound of Freedom, and it's loosely based on a true story. It tells the story of Tim Ballard, a former U.S. government agent who worked for the Department of Homeland Security. He quit his job in order to rescue children from global sex trafficking. In other words, these were minor children who were being stolen from their families, kidnapped, and sexually exploited. Tim Ballard founded an organization called Operation Underground Railroad. Now, the choice of the name of the organization to me is somewhat synchronistic because I live in a state, Florida, where our governor is attempting to erase history and or rewrite it. So I say synchronistic because perhaps people will take the time, one, to go see the movie, and two, to perhaps delve into the Underground Railroad. The Underground Railroad is a part of American history, U.S. history, and it refers to a period of time in American history in the early 1800s when a Quaker abolitionist named Isaac T. Hopper set up a network in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania that helped enslaved people obtain their freedom. There are numerous resources that I would encourage you to seek out to gain additional information, but one such resource could be the National Underground Railroad Freedom Center, which is located in Cincinnati, Ohio. The website for this organization is www.freedomcenter.org. And the National Underground Railroad Center, it's a museum of conscious, and I'm reading this or quoting this from their website, an educational center, a convener of dialogue, and a beacon of light for inclusive freedom around the globe. I'm of a generation, and most people in the United States and throughout the world have been taught and were educated. One symbol of the Underground Railroad was Harriet Tubman, and we've been taught that she single-handedly helped numerous enslaved people reach their freedom. There's a lot of history associated with the Underground Railroad in American history, and I would refer you to the National Park Service at nps.gov. A lot of information is there, including they have a map that shows some of the routes that slaves took in order to gain their freedom. Art, music, literature, even the movies that we see can be a form of political protest and or sources of information. And for me, this movie indeed did just that. Essentially, the three most common forms of human trafficking are sex trafficking, forced labor, and debt bondage. The top 5 states with the highest human trafficking cases are California, Texas, Florida, Michigan, and Ohio. The average age of young or minor children who have been trafficked is approximately 12 years old. Another resource would be the Blue Campaign, which can be found at dhs.gov. This is a national public awareness campaign which is designed to educate the public, law enforcement, and other industry partners to recognize the indicators of human trafficking and how to appropriately respond to possible cases. So let me just circle back around and talk briefly about the state in which I live, Florida. Our current governor is Ron DeSantis, and he most recently instituted a policy where Florida teachers are required to instruct middle school students that enslaved people, and I quote, develop skills which in some instances could be applied for their personal benefit. Trust and believe. The only benefit that was derived from slavery was that those people, my ancestors, who were enslaved, built this country, as did Native Americans, as did many other immigrants. However, the tale of Africans who were stolen from the continent of Africa and forced to come here is a tale for another time. But again, these are facts. And no amount of any state, not just Florida, but throughout the United States, under the guise that teaching truth is, quote, critical race theory. Again, a subject for another podcast. Let me just circle back around and just talk a little bit more about the movie, which I highly recommend. Indeed, the trafficking of minor children occurs more frequently than we perhaps understand or appreciate, which is why this movie indeed was an eye-opening, though it's labeled as entertainment, it is based somewhat in facts. And so children account for half of the victims of human trafficking. In fact, as I had previously stated, the average age that a young person becomes involved in sex trafficking is 12 years old. Any youth under the age of 18 who's involved in a commercial sex act is considered to be a victim of trafficking. Sex traffickers prey on vulnerable people, especially young people, and often lure them with promises of protection, love, or adventure. They may contact potential victims through social media or approach them at clubs, bars, schools, and malls, or in metro stations. Labor trafficking includes situations of debt bondage, forced labor, and involuntary child labor. Common types of labor trafficking include people forced to work in homes as domestic servants and factory workers held in inhumane conditions with little to no pay. Victims of human trafficking are often afraid to come forward and unable to leave traffickers because of trauma, physical violence, fear of harm to their families, having nowhere else to go, or a distrust of authority figures. If you learn to recognize the warning signs of human trafficking, you could help save a life. So what are some of the red flags and warning signs? And all this information was obtained from the website oag.dc.gov, which is the Office of the Attorney General for the District of Columbia. They have a human trafficking fact sheet, which is available in various languages such as Amharic, Chinese, French, Korean, Vietnamese, and Spanish. So I would certainly ask that you go to that website and share this information. So it says under red flags and warning signs, the sale of children for sex occurs worldwide and unfortunately even happens here in the District of Columbia. If you learn to recognize the signs of human trafficking, you could help to save someone's life. So sexual trafficking warning signs include running away from home, truancy, not attending school, possessing cell phones that they did not purchase on their own, making purchases with credit cards that do not belong to them, older boyfriends, signs of physical abuse such as burn marks, bruises, or cuts, new tattoos. Traffickers often use tattoos as a form of branding. Signs of gang affiliation. Labor trafficking warning signs include unpaid, being paid very little or paid only through tips, working excessively long or unusual hours, your freedom being curtailed. In other words, you're not free to come and go as you please. You owe a large debt and you're unable to pay it off. The withholding of important documents such as a passport, security card, as well high security measures existing in the workplace or living conditions being unsafe, the presence of barbed wire, security cameras, etc. So, to get help, if you or someone you know is a victim of human trafficking, you can call the National Human Trafficking Hotline at 1-888, that's 3 8s, 373-7888, or text help to 233-733. You can also call the Child Abuse and Neglect Hotline at 202-671-SAFE, or the SAFE spells out to the following digits, 7233. I wanted to speak on this ever so briefly because, again, Florida is not the only state that's attempting to whitewash or abolish factual history. In fact, regrettably, in the state of Florida, one such organization, prageru.com, prageru.com, which is a far-right group of individuals, resources that they have on their website are now being incorporated into the Florida educational system and the curriculum. I'm not going to ruin the plot of the movie. Again, I would highly recommend going to see the movie. Again, there are times when, at least for me, synchronistically, things happen, and that's what led me to take a few moments this evening because I felt it was an opportunity to talk about factual history, i.e., the Underground Railroad, the state of education in the state of Florida, and how after I viewed this movie, it got me to thinking about all of the issues I briefly touched on here. The United States is not by itself. Certainly throughout the world, attempts are being made to suppress knowledge and information. However, as long as we have the ability to think, research, locate information from reputable resources in which you can confirm facts, then we, the people, have an opportunity to make a difference. So as you can imagine, the movie is indeed controversial, not just for the subject matter, but apparently the main character, Tim Ballard, who in fact exists, in his official reports and the retelling of, I guess, the impetus for the movie, according to some sources, he's embellished the facts. And while that may be true, there's still a kernel of truth in that, as we know, young people are being sexually exploited. This would not be possible were there not a demand for young children to be sexually exploited by, regrettably, grown men and sometimes grown women. I apologize if any of this information has triggered anyone who may have suffered abuse in their lifetime. I do apologize for that. But again, the only way we can get to the root of problems is to discuss them and or to air the issues in public. I may or may not add a musical background to this, and I do not own the rights to the music being played in the background should I add music to the background. But as usual, I want to thank you for your attention. And again, I always say, you have the ability to see the movie, make up your mind, and if you choose to take action, because the bottom line is after I viewed the movie, I took it as a call to action. In other words, you can go see the movie, you can leave the theater and say, oh my God, that's horrific, and or perhaps there's something you can do. Thank you so much for your attention.